Hi everyone, this is Geoff Hall with another version of Westford Tales, and it's kind of a different spin on it this time. In the past I've done interviews with single individuals like Mickey Crocker, Jim Antonelli, who we did fairly recently, and Ken Tebbets, just to name a few. But I'm here this morning on Sugarloaf Hill.
Quote.
With two old friends of mine, Paul McMillan and Jim Van Beaver, who I may be referring to as Beaver because that's how we knew him growing up. We all grew up in Graniteville. We all graduated from Westford Academy in the mid-1960s. And we're here to share our experience of growing up in the village of Graniteville, when each of our villages had a more of a distinct identity, would you say?
Rivalry.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And we took great pride in that.
Absolutely.
You know, we were children of the greatest generation, known as baby boomers. So, Paul, I want to start with you. Paul, your family has ties to Granite, go back beyond you. Your mother's family, correct?
Yeah, my mother grew up on over by the St. Catherine's Church, and the house burned down over there.
1929 or something?
Yeah, December 27th.
Yeah.
I lost a brother, a sister, and a next door neighbor who was visiting.
Yeah.
And she got burned over 90% of her body. Survived.
Yeah.
Wasn't supposed to have children, but here I am.
Yeah, yeah. It's, I remember you telling me that. That house is still standing today.
Yeah,
yes.
it looks good now. That used to be the old trolley station.
That was the
for
trolley
the Red Line.
station, yeah. For the old red line that went through
Yeah.
there. How about you, Beep?
Well, actually, my father grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts, working class guy. And
But your mom was Western.
Yeah, Ma came here when she was 5 years old. Her father had been an overseer in the mills at Worcester, and the mill sent him here. So that's how they came. And then at first they leased the house, and then they bought the house I'm in now. So that's how our family got here.
And the house is located?
River Street.
River Street.
Yeah.
And
By
if
the ball
you
field.
wondering where, if you headed into the Graniteville ball field, it's the house on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the significance of that house. Paul, you and I grew up on North Street.
Yep.
You were a couple of, my dad built his house in 53 when we moved in.
All about the same time. They all built them. Wally, your father, my father.
The Bichards. And, you know, it's funny because looking at the street and the kids that grew up on it, we were all, all post-war baby boomer kids. In the first 5 to 10 years, Denny Nielsen, yourself, the Pendleberries.
The Thiels, the Langleys.
Yeah, the Langleys all grew up in that area and kind of hung out together and did things.
Did a lot of things. Some things we shouldn't have done.
Well, those may be included.
Yeah.
But our proximity, Paul, was Gould's Farm. You spend any time down there?
Yeah, we spent a lot of time there. Your brothers and I, we used to go up and our first introduction was old Eddie Gould, Bernice's father. Had a sawmill. It was still there, I think.
Yeah.
And we used to load. That was the Home Depot of Westford at the time.
Yeah.
You could buy your roofing shingles, your lumber, your nails, bricks. They had a kiln to make bricks. They had everything there, and everybody shopped there. And we'd help load the trucks, the flatbed trucks, and he'd get his little.
How old were you, Paul?
Back then, probably 9.
Okay.
They were wet lumber. It was green lumber, and they were like 10, 12 feet long. It took 2 of us to put it up on the truck, 2 of us on the truck to put it in the pile. It was kind of, Ronnie Langley was involved, your brother Doug, Billy, myself. And Eddie went to get his little corduroy change purse, unclick it, and give us a dime at the end of the day.
Was that an 8-hour day?
No, for us it was probably, we were probably there 6 hours, but we probably worked 3 hours. Maybe
And you got a
2.
dime for it. But you were telling me that you kind of organized after that and demanded.
We went on strike. we demanded a quarter, and he really got mad at us, and he thought that was outrageous. And he actually said, in my day, a quarter would have been a week's pay or something. I mean, he was old as dirt back then, too. I mean, he was a nice guy. He was a nice guy, but
But you got your way.
He relented and gave us a quarter.
Yeah.
We thought we were happy.
Paul, what's the different things that you did? You had a paper route up there?
Yeah, I took it over from your brother Doug.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and our first stop on paper route was the Caliente. Actually, Charlie Sylvester's house.
Okay, yep.
Yeah, and then down to in the Hayes' house, and
Yeah.
we did Keys Road. Went up to Wyman's Beach, dropped one off at their house. It was a long paper route. Didn't even get started. Then we came back through on Gould Road and come up the hill and gave Bernice her paper.
And I had my Roger had the route on North Street that went as
Yep.
far down as yours. But you know, Roger told me an interesting story about. He said when Billy was delivering papers at the Caliente, he sent Roger out one Friday, and he said when you collect, he says go around
Go
the
the
back,
back, yep.
and the, Mrs. Paduano, the
Yep.
old lady, would come out
Yep.
and give you. He said, so Roger says, I'm about 11 years old. He says, I knock on the door, Mrs. Paduano, so I'm here with the paper. She says, and I'm here to collect. She says, okay. She went back in, she gave me the money and a bottle of beer.
I never got a beer, but we probably could have at the time. We went
But it was standard. He said, he asked Billy after, he says, oh, I forgot to tell you about that.
No,
She's going to give you a beer.
She must have known you. Must have known you guys. She used to give us a tip back then. A big tip was 50 cents.
Yeah. The Suburban Automotive that's there now
Yep.
was owned by Tommy Gower back
Yeah.
then. Tommy was a selectman in
yeah,
town,
yeah.
very active. He ended up, one of the last jobs he had at the time was a chauffeur for the sergeants,
Oh yeah,
correct?
him and Billy Graham.
Yeah. And you, and I'm thinking Dennis Nielsen.
I took over. Chuck Gower was worked there
Okay.
before me, and I had to get a work permit because I was too young.
Okay.
So I had to go up to the high school and see Lloyd Blanchard because he would sign off the work permit. I don't know why that was like that, but and Lloyd said, "Geez," he's looking at it and he says, "Boy, you're doing pretty good." And I says, "Why? What? You know?" He says, "$750." And he
Yeah.
says, "Who's giving you $750?" And I says, "Oh, that's for a week."
And I know that because the Pendleberries were there, Dennis Nielsen. and-
Duncan took over after me.
Yeah, but you know, it was kind of a hangout
It was.
for
Oh,
us,
geez, yeah.
us guys on North Street.
Yeah.
We'd play tackle football in that little
Yeah.
area next to it, and you might have gotten 2 customers all afternoon coming in for gas.
One was your mother,
One was my mom.
Mrs. Brady. Yeah, I mean, everybody had their routines. You know,
You
But
know,
you got a
I,
bag of chips and a Coke every day. That was part of your pay, though.
No big deal.
and you know, in the wintertime, we skated and sledded. Sledded maybe in the hill across the street from
Your brother's house.
from my brother's house, which is known as Dempsey Way today. Okay,
Yeah,
that's the name.
I can never remember the name.
It was named after Dave Guthrie's dog, by the way.
Oh, really?
Dempsey's Way. But we skated. Skated, Paul. Where?
Stewart's Pond.
Stewart's Pond.
And then there was the pond back of
Gibbons's.
Gibbons's.
Yeah. And it's interesting because that little pond area, and it was a very small pond, we skated on, but it was next to almost maybe 100 feet from the alleged encampment site
Yeah.
that
Which we
David
never
Brody
knew- which
refers.
none of us ever knew about.
None of us ever knew about it. We skated, spent a lot of time roaming the woods down there, you know, spent the time. Do you remember what they called that hill behind there? It's now though? Grave Hill, Paul?
Oh, that one? Oh, yeah, now you say it, yeah.
Because there was piles of rocks,
Yeah, they,
and we thought they were Indian graves, so
I
we
think they were
called
covering
it.
up old dumps or something.
Well, that hill's all gone
Yeah,
now.
that went out with the sand pit.
That was out with the sand pit, you're correct. Jimmy,
Yes.
your early years, who did you chum with, and what did you guys do?
Well, let me think. Well, my next door named Tim Regan, and
Yeah.
the Haleys, Johnny and
Yeah.
Bethel Haley, and Danny Holmes. That was early on,
Yeah.
you know. And the things was center of our, well, especially in the spring, was baseball, because behind my house was the baseball field, of course. So that preoccupied us a lot, and it was baseball and.
Talk a little bit about small fry baseball. It was called small fry, not Little League.
Yeah.
And the reason for that?
Well, my Uncle Harry Smith was kind of one of the founders of Little League, and in order to become a full-fledged little league, you had to pay a fee, you know. But we didn't have any money for that, so he said, heck, we'll call it the small fry league instead, you know, so they have to pay a fee for it. But that's how they got that name, yeah.
He was one of the driving forces.
He was.
Who was given the credit? Who, I mean,
Bobby Wall, Father Wall, later
Yeah.
on, was one of the really was the driver of the Westford Small Fry League. You know, he lived on First Street.
Yeah. The
And-
Wall family had been very active in town government.
Big family back then.
Yeah.
And everything kind of centered out of Bobby Wall's house. You know, you picked up your uniform there and you turned it in, and you know, that's where the phone number was for the league and stuff like that. You know.
Yeah. I remember you telling me the story of it. Well, where was everything stored?
Oh yeah. Well, my house was kind of the de facto Little League center. I don't know. They kept the equipment in my garage. We never walk in the garage, so they just come and go,
Yeah.
you know. And my father would Empire, and they, you know, if there was no phone or anything on the field. So if we needed to call home or bathroom, my house was where they came. You know, or somebody's ride didn't show up after the game, they'd be in the house watching television, my parents, till their ride showed up and stuff like that.
Well, you told me that your father would sit down for dinner and
Yeah,
they'd
come
be
and get
knock
him.
on the door
Yeah.
and say, "Fam, we need an umpire out
He
here."
wasn't a very good umpire either. It was terrible.
Liked his pipe though.
If it was home run was close, he'd call it fair ball attic, you know. Heck with it. Yeah, but that was the way it
But
was.
there is it. That 1953 was the first organized. We had done some research on this and found out it actually got started in January. They were going to start with 4 teams. They got enough kids to go to 6 teams, and the original 6 teams ran until Labor Day.
Primarily Forge Village and Granite.
Oh, yeah.
Forge Village and Granite.
And there was one team from Nabnasset,
Yeah.
Waldo Lieberg,
Yeah.
and that represent very few from the center of Parker Village.
Yeah.
Although a lot
There were
of
some.
yeah, some of the early founders of the league were from Nabville, like the Caffell family. Were
Yeah.
very,
Well, the
Waldo.
Cafells came in
They
later.
later.
They
were
were
later,
they
yeah.
really were did a lot.
They were
though.
very
They really
active in the
did.
late 1950s and the early
Waldo Lieberg,
60s.
as you said, yeah.
Waldo
did
Lieberg,
a
yeah.
lot, too,
Waldo and his wife, Peg was very, very
Yeah,
active
yeah.
in it. And I know that when you look at the pictures from that first year, 1953, Bobby Wall was in each one
Yeah.
of those
Yeah.
pictures.
Yeah.
The coaches were high school kids,
Yeah, they were.
All Graniteville mostly.
mostly Graniteville
Yeah.
kids, yeah.
Fifi Cody might have been one of the oldest ones.
Fifi Cody came in the next year, Paul,
Yeah, with our team, right. when we
with the
came in,
athletics, yeah.
You're right.
With the
you're
athletics
right.
because
We were too young the first year.
Yeah. Well, I got a picture of my brother Billy holding the
Trophy.
Trophy. It was
Yeah.
like the Stanley Cup. If your team won it, it went from kid to kid to kid, you know, like that. So, where did you guys skate?
Well, we had 2 spots. There was the blacksmith on Bridge Street, which was very popular. And if you go by that stairs, there's a lot of weeds on.
Yeah.
But those days, it was what is as many weeds?
Wide
Like-
open.
Yeah, wide open. Yeah, it was easy to get to the blacksmith. You could
Just didn't go up to the brook end.
yeah, I know. And then the other spot we had was behind the field. We called the Swarm,
Yeah.
which was actually a better spot, but it was harder to get to. You had to walk down a hill and stuff, you know.
I remember one time, and this was by the time we were teenagers, but a group of us went up by the Arch Bridge and skated up there. We
Yeah.
had a hockey game
Yeah,
going.
yeah.
One of the few times. I needed a stick to stay up.
Our parents used to skate right here in this cove over here.
One
You
thing
know,
about the
yes.
but with the blacksmith and the swamp, they were very shallow.
Yeah.
So you couldn't get much trouble there,
No.
you know.
But that's it. Behind us is the Mill Pond. Okay,
Yeah,
we're
that
on
was
top of
taboo there.
we called the bandstand, but learned it was called Sugarloaf Hill at one time.
To our surprise.
but we were told not to skate there.
Never.
Current, yeah.
You know, and I know it must have been Phil Hall once again that took this picture because Dot Hall gave me a picture of a group of people. I guess they were out skating and they had hockey sticks
Yeah.
out on the Mill Pond. I'm saying, geez, that was taboo for
Yeah,
us.
my mother said it was always in this corner over here. You didn't go out towards that side.
Yeah. If you went down the Bandstand Hill, okay, we got Sergeant School,
Yep.
which is now housing for senior citizens. And it closed in the early 1980s. And then Mary Smith
Yep.
got the driving force to come in and put some affordable housing rental units in here that are in the field, but and housing for seniors. But we all went to the Sergeant School.
We did.
Any great memories? Let's start with you, Paul. You were there a few years ahead of us, so.
Yeah, I had, we all had the same team. I had most of the teachers my mother had.
Yeah. Yeah?
Mrs. Flint was first grade, Mrs. Bell was second grade.
Miss Bell.
Miss Bell, right. And Mrs. Provo was third, Lottie Blodgett was fourth grade.
Yeah.
Miss Wright was
Miss Wright.
fifth grade, and I had Gibbons and Snodgrass with a sixth grade teacher.
Yeah.
When we were there, it was only up to sixth, but before that, it was up to eighth grade.
When I started there, you and I started together in 1954, and it was grades 1 through 8. And I know that my cousin Nancy Hall, okay, she was part of the 8th grade, and she's actually got a, they put out a yearbook, you know, the
High quality, I bet.
all stapled together. A lot of it's faded, but it was kind of a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
But that same year, after 54, 55, the academy opened. Okay, Westford Academy, now known as the.
Now, were you guys
Abbott
ever
Middle.
involved in the they had like a musical recital at the town hall for us?
I don't remember that.
No, I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I was so musically inclined, I did the triangle. It was either that or the two sticks.
What I do remember is fifth grade. The 5th grade, we had to put on some kind of a play, and we all had certain lines, and some people had individual lines. But you know, it was one of the interesting things I always remember about a couple of stories. First of all, one that involves you, Paul, and how things are different today. I was in about the 2nd grade, and you and my brother Billy and your crowd, and it was the last day of school, and they were out there with the elastics and shooting the elastics at the girls in the schoolyard. Well, one of the girls went in and told Ma Gibbons, who was the principal at the time, that they're out there with elastics. And I'll never forget those front doors opening, and she went out, and I think you were one of the first ones she grabbed, and she got him by the ear and started twisting your ear and said, "Don't you ever," and then I think Dennis Nielsen ran by and she got him by the ear, and then my brother Billy. You know what's interesting about that?
No one talked.
No one went home and said, "You know what happened today at school?"
Well, it's like the time John Cannell got us and give us a boot in the pants one day.
Yeah.
And next time we'll tell your mother and father.
Yeah.
Well, that was it. And it was in front of the old hardware store.
Yeah.
We were bouncing a ball against the steps, and Floyd always. Now that I look at it, it would drive me crazy every night. Listen to that ball bounce 55,000 times a night, for God's sake.
But you know, the other thing was, you know, we had recess here, okay, and you played in the field that's below us that now has the housing. Now, an interesting fact about that is back during the Second World War, that was a scrapyard.
Yeah.
Those are hard.
But then there was a tennis court there.
Yeah.
It was never in use when we were there. They had the posts and everything, but the
No.
wire was stopped. Everybody kept running into the wire. They put up some swing sets and some teeter boards, whatever,
Teeter
seesaws.
set, yeah.
And there was a baseball diamond. If you hit the putt-putt house, it was a home run.
But we were, when recess came or at lunchtime, if you had a dime, a nickel or a dime, you could walk from Sergeant School and walk down any one of those stores. And there was Parents Market, there was Highland Pharmacy, the drugstore.
Reeves Market.
There was George Reeves's place, okay? And with each one of those, like I said, so at noontime, you'd see this group of kids walking down the street.
I don't think we go to Holmes's Ice Cream. I don't think it was open in the day, was it?
I don't think that was open at the time.
Yeah, it was open at
But the
night.
idea that these kids were leaving the schoolyard and walking down the street unattended with no guides,
We used
okay?
to walk from North Street. That was a long way down.
Yeah.
So take our bikes down, you know.
You honored those stores, right? Your parents did?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I was going to say that you had the stores in Graniteville,
The Grodno.
and then the Grodno store. Grodno was known for what?
their meat.
Their meats. Yeah.
Mike Sawat.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah,
Mike,
that's I couldn't think of his name yesterday, and that was
Mike,
it.
yeah.
But and the Russian women at Easter and Christmas made this brown bread, and so they made sausages, Russian style. And they sold out so fast.
Yeah.
You had to get in line to get them, because once they were gone, they were gone.
Yeah.
But they had ice cream. They scooped ice cream there and everything else.
Yeah.
I don't think parents scooped ice cream. Did they ever scoop it?
I don't believe so.
And Georgie
No.
didn't have any of that.
Yeah. Well, the drugstore, who's Highland Pharmacy, Louis,
I
can't remember his
can't
last
remember.
name.
or something like that.
Something,
Yeah.
yeah.
Greek, wasn't he?
Yeah. And he moved in from the Highlands in Lowell.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where they got the name from. Yeah.
And the interesting part about that, all through the 50s, that was the only drugstore in town.
Yep.
It wasn't until NAB Pharmacy came in the early part of the 60s that you had a second one. So
And that one had an old soda fountain on it and everything
Oh,
else.
yeah,
Not recognizable today, but it was there.
yeah. So you went to any one of there was the stores, as I said, there was the post office was right there in back of what we might have known, people might have known a little better as Arthur Pellerin's hardware store.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because after Reese moved out, Reese's was there, and then
Norman came in, didn't
Norman came
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
from Dracut,
Yeah.
and he ran the hardware store.
And the post office guys were the Harringtons over
Yeah.
here.
Yes.
The two brothers, weren't they, or something?
Yeah, Harrington's, yes. And but the post office was right in that building
yeah,
there,
yeah.
in the side. Block 67, my mother had.
Regina Raymond was one of the clerks
Yeah.
of the post office, and Norman would go back and forth between the hot
Across the street, there was a barber shop.
Leo.
Yep, Leo Bruley's. 65 cents, and if you're under 12, you got a nickel back.
That's right.
But if TV is on, you had a problem.
Didn't you have a problem once, Paul,
I
with
did.
that?
I got a haircut, and I went back home. My mother said, "I thought you got a haircut." I said, "I did." She says, "Take a look in the mirror." And I looked. Leo only did one side of my head. I had to go back and get the other side of Leo. Gun smoke was on. You liked his? Oh yeah, you had good comic book.
Yeah.
And
But
I
that
can
was kind of
remember,
a hang up for a lot of guys
Yeah.
in the village.
Yeah.
There, that Leo
They
Evans
just get out
would
of the
go
house.
over
They
there.
go,
Yeah.
Once a week they
Costanza
get a
was
haircut,
over there.
yeah.
There's a bunch. When you start thinking of the kids that were in the village, we had some characters.
Well, let's talk a little bit about characters. Characters they're part of the village, you might say icons, Mohawk,
Oh yeah.
okay? And
Harley Davidson.
he had a Harley Davidson. He worked for the highway department at the time.
And he had an old three-wheel motorcycle with a box on there. It was a low police.
Yeah.
That's where he got it.
Yeah,
He'd go down to the spring on North Street and get his water, because he lived in a trailer on Plain Road.
yeah.
Didn't have water.
No.
I don't even sure it had electricity. Mohawk was a kind of a throwback.
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
He had a hat. Oh, that hat too.
Yep.
Who else?
Pete Nida,
Yeah.
Pete Nida, okay. Now, Pete was
handicap.
very handicapped.
Loved the Red Sox.
Oh yeah.
Loved the Red Sox, yeah.
Really did.
And
yeah.
you'd see him walking down the street, all the time.
Yeah.
Headed. You just think of those that kind of stick out.
Manny Doobie.
Manny Doobie, yeah.
He was a grave digger. He dug all the graves at St. Catherine's Church by hand.
Yeah. We didn't. Graniteville. It's Graniteville because of
The quarries.
the
Yeah.
quarries. Did you spend any time up there?
Oh, a lot of times, huh?
Every summer, probably every waking minute in the summers.
And it really wasn't that dangerous.
No, it really wasn't.
No.
I mean, probably the worst thing you do, maybe cut your feet on a rock or something.
Yeah.
But it wasn't high,
No.
and the water was up. We thought it was
Great.
nice,
Clear
and,
as a bell.
It was a good place to go.
No.
Even the mothers came up with
Yeah.
the young kids.
Yeah,
They had their
yeah.
own, it was a stone beach, but they had their own little beach on the other side.
Yeah.
There's a picture. The museum has a picture, but it's interesting, Paul. This was taken, according to the picture itself, it's of 1942, and it showed the island coming out, the Rock Island, where back in the mid '60s, you go up and everybody be sunbathing there.
Laying around, yeah.
Yeah.
But where the picture was taken, you could see that small area because my mother used to come up with my younger brother, and he could swim in that area.
Right. But,
No.
but it wasn't sand.
No, it wasn't sand.
No.
And there was the rope swing
Yeah,
across.
yeah.
In the tree house.
Yeah.
Trails, yeah.
Jump out of the tree house.
That was known as Palmer's.
Yep.
Okay?
Yeah.
There was a smaller one if you went up the road by Hillman's
Yep.
that I actually learned to swim in because
Yeah,
it was very,
yeah,
very
that was,
shallow.
and that was an active quarry when we were kids.
Yes. Yep. For
And that was
some
a
time.
Phil Palmer, I
Yeah.
think, had that one.
By the end of the 50s, it was closed with the buildings. And then if you went a little further over, the Forge kids came to,
The ledge.
what was known as Hilda's quarry at the time.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
found most of the Forge kids came up there.
Hilda's wasn't as nice as Palmer's, so I never saw
Yeah.
that.
Well, you know, we didn't go over there. Number one, you had cables in the water and
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah.
I mean, you had to know where you're going over there.
thought the water was cleaner in Palmer.
people were going on. I remember the Vendrette brothers going off the top of that ledge. I
Oh,
said,
yeah.
my God,
that was dangerous over there.
that was pretty
yeah.
high.
Yeah.
Still is.
You remember snapping turtles around here?
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah.
There used to be, I can remember, is going out into the schoolyard, and right around here, you'd see these snappers. They had to be 150, 200 years old.
They were huge. They bite too.
Yeah.
We used to paint signs on their shells.
I saw
They weren't probably appropriate, but
Yeah.
the ladies, remember they had the fences over there where the locks were to go into the mills?
Yeah.
You could stand out on the cement there. They're still there, but then, and Mrs. Soker and a couple looking, and they said, "Oh, look at that!" And they saw the turtle with a slogan on it. We'll call it. and the sportsman club used to have a bounty on them. We had a
Yeah.
big every summer. Somebody got $50 on for the biggest turtle.
I remember behind my house, the ball field, and I guess they'd be going to lay their eggs, the turtles, and they'd go across the ball field. And one time, my neighbor Jackie Regan, remember those wash tubs there?
Mm-hmm.
He put the wash tub over the turtle. He could see the wash tub going across.
Moved the whole thing.
Other than swimming, did you spend any time at the quarries? I know we used to, just go up and roam the rocks and things like that. Walk along the
Oh
cliffs.
yeah,
and-
no, we used to go up. Remember the old orange crane at the top?
Yeah.
Billy and I and Joe Stabinski went up.
Yeah.
It was easy getting up the top. It took us 6 hours to come off the top because you had to come off the platform and find your legs on that thing. It was, gee, we were stupid.
One of the things that we did, and of course you were there once a week, was the town dump.
Yeah.
And it was located today, if you went up by where Spalding's Forest is,
Yep.
okay, the entryway, it's now a hill, it became the landfill and was closed in 1986, I believe it was. And it closed finally in 1986, and the town went to townwide pickup, and it was very controversial at the time. But,
I missed it. I used to like going to the top.
well, I'll tell you, as kids, we used to spend time up there.
Yeah,
At
too
night,
much
at
time,
night, at
probably,
night,
Yeah.
ratting.
Ratting,
Oh, God, yeah.
and you'd go up there either with maybe a .22 rifle
Or a club.
or a club,
You worked in pairs. One had a flashlight, the other had the club.
and just kill rats, and that was called ratting.
And there were a lot.
Oh, God, yeah.
And
That place was awful.
that was when they burned at the dump.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
would take, and once it piled up, they would
There
go
was always a
in,
bulldozer up there.
and it just seemed the fire department spent a lot of time up there.
That was a
Yeah.
bad place.
It was all.
dirty. Oh, my
Again,
God.
how bright can you be to go out and kill rats in the
Well,
dark?
if you were from Graniteville, that was one of the things you did growing up. You did ratting.
And the other thing in Graniteville, we had the two gangs, the Finks and the Punks.
Get to them in a minute. I just want to talk a little bit about we mentioned the Arch Bridge and some of these, Graniteville proper, and how we ended up down there. It became, we were on North Street, you were down here, but as you became, middle school and then, into high school, it became a hangout, okay? Your group, Paul, okay, hung out kind of in front of the, by the Highland Pharmacy,
Yeah.
the drugstore, or in the front of where Arthur Pellerin's place
The
was.
hardware store.
And
Had
you-
a porch on it then.
Had a porch on it, yeah. And the other group, which was
The Finks?
The Finks.
Yeah.
We were the punks.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we got the names.
I don't know how they ended up, but the Punks and the Finks.
Yeah.
And the Finks hung around where?
Well, a couple places. We first, the Hole, which was over by the Haley's Oil over there.
Yeah.
It was basically a cellar.
So, yeah.
It was the big. If you went to Haley's today, where John Haley runs, it is the little basement underneath. Yeah.
It's not very big.
Not very big. Big enough for card games.
Yeah,
And,
Hell of a lot of guys, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we moved over the wall later on.
Yeah, we were, that's, but I want to talk a little bit about, some of the episodes down at the, were you intimidated by the Punks?
Oh, yeah. Ooh, God, yeah. Not,
We used to beat on each other, really.
yeah,
bad.
well, we were recipients more than.
We'd play basketball or baseball or something. It's just got to turn into a brawl every time.
Yeah. We had some good athletes
We
in the
did.
Finks, though.
Oh, yeah, you
Bobby
did.
Ross was
Bobby
good,
Ross.
Very good. And
But you think
Dennis
of it,
Mulligan.
Yeah,
Dennis.
Dennis Mulligan, but for your crowd too, Paul.
Yeah, we had the Sudaks and Ernie Smith, Donnie Parent.
Yeah.
You know,
Very
even
good.
Ronnie Hildreth come down. He wasn't really a punk though, because he was from the center, so he didn't count.
But now you start to see the intermingling.
Oh, yeah.
Once you get to the high school of and when you get to the high school, you see these sports teams. And we had some great sports teams.
Oh, we
gosh,
did.
Yeah.
We had about a nucleus of about 10.
You
or 10
were on the Paul was on those
yeah,
teams.
we had a nucleus of about 10 or 12 guys. And back then, if you had 2 or 3 really good players, you had a good team.
You had
Yeah.
one.
You
You
know.
had more than 2 or 3 though.
Oh, we had a lot.
Yeah.
That 62 team was loaded.
Well, I went to the academy in the 8th grade, and 8th grade and freshman year, you guys only tied 1 game, otherwise
Yeah.
undefeated.
Yeah.
That's how good they were.
Yeah.
Very.
No, we had the undefeated season in 62, and
Yeah.
in 63 we went 0-0 with Nashoba Tech, Nashoba Regional rather, and but we still won the state championship both
Yes.
years.
But there's a lot of those. Once again, when you look at
Some
the
wrestling
makeup,
teams, too, yeah.
Well, the wrestling team, there was six or seven state champions that year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't that old. We were one of the few schools in this area to have it, and I think Lowell even got it after us. George Bossy
Lowell
came
did
in.
not come in until 1964, and George came down. George Bossy, a legend in Lowell,
Yeah.
came down from Winnacunnet High School in New Hampshire,
yeah.
and took over in Lowell. Back then, before Chelmsford,
North Andover was the only other school I can think of that had
North
it.
Andover,
and Lawrence,
Ipswich.
we used to Lawrence Academy.
yeah, Lawrence Academy.
And we had
And Groton Dunstable, not Groton Dunstable at the time, but they
Yeah.
had a wrestling team. Fishing Derby,
Oh yes.
okay? Where was the Fishing Derby held?
Well, we called the Trout Brook was by the day school.
Yep.
That's where
It's called Reed's Brook.
Yeah, they call it,
yeah.
yeah.
on
Reed's
both
Brook.
sides of on both sides of the street.
It was always the Saturday before April vacation.
Yep.
And the sportsman ran it, Club ran it, and they would stock it too with trout.
Yeah, with trout.
And it was a big deal.
Oh, there had to be 200, 300 kids back
Yeah.
then, easy.
Yeah.
They'd be there.
And the first thing you yell is first cuts.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
If you got tangled, you're cutting their line. But they had good prizes.
They did. I remember I came in, I won second prize one year, and I got a new reel,
Yeah.
And
Which was a big deal back then.
yeah, then I went fishing the next day. My father would do his bridge, and he dropped it in the water, So we had to get a boat out and fish her out, Oh God! But I mean, we had hot dogs and stuff like that.
Doobie's Bridge is right in back of us.
Yeah,
actually,
right,
you
yeah.
know.
You mentioned and it was there, I think, until 1970s, or a little bit beyond, but the Sportsman's Club up on West Street. Were you a member, Paul?
Yeah, for a while. And a lot of the kids, they had a kids program back then for shooting. Target. They had the
Yeah.
indoor range. We would go up at night, and on I think it was Thursday nights or something like that. And like Doug LaFay and the Sabinskis, again, Joey Costanza, and a couple of Reagans, and it was a lot. I mean, everybody showed up there.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, hunting. I mean,
Ooh.
I hunted. I shouldn't say, my older brothers hunted. I tried it once.
Well, we walked in the
It
woods
wasn't
with
for me.
guns. You had to hunt. You had to actually shoot something.
But they had, you know, 12 gauge shotguns,
Yeah.
20 gauge shotguns in the house. And if you got home from school, of course, there was a lot more open space back
Oh, yeah.
then.
Oh, yeah,
So you could
yeah.
walk back down into the woods and go hunting. And, you know, the old saying, you know, I told you the story about a friend of mine saying, you know, we were kids, if you got out of school, took your gun and walked down the street,
Yep.
people go by and say, there's a kid that's really got it together.
Well, like,
yeah.
we used
Don't
to
do
thumb
that
over.
today.
We used to thumb over to Bradley Sporting Goods near the Bucket at the
Yeah.
time, and we'd buy a box of shots, you know, shot 22s, and I think it was like 89 cents or something. It was,
Yeah.
we didn't have any money, so
Yeah.
it wasn't much money.
The
And
gun-
you'd say, let's meet at the drugstore, and everybody come up with their 22s. Be 7 or 8 of us, and we'd go up the quarry and shoot the hell out of frogs. It's amazing no one got killed.
Yeah.
But today, if you saw that crew going up there, you'd call a SWAT team.
Oh
And-
yeah.
Oh, I
know?
remember sleeping out up there one night, a bunch of
yeah.
us, and we captured frogs and cut the legs off because frog legs were supposed to be some kind
Oh
of a
yeah,
delicacy,
delicacy.
yeah.
and we fried them up, and I threw them all up the next morning.
That might have had something to do with the beer, though.
No, as a matter of fact, there was no beer then, although there was a little later on at the time. But the fishing derby was
Oh, yeah.
really a
deal.
big
It
thing.
really was.
Girls and boys.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And we got Robin Cannell's got some films of that.
Does she really?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was a big deal. I mean,
Scotty had the best equipment. Scotty would show up. He had everything. His father
These-
bought him everything.
I think you could start fishing at 8 o'clock, and they blew a whistle.
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah.
And then everybody got their lines in the water.
They had a culvert going underneath the tracks. They actually had a screen there, so the fish couldn't get beyond. You know.
That was a big deal.
Holidays, Memorial Day, Paul.
The parades. and
Okay.
They'd come down to the monument and salute, and they'd shoot off, and when they just got rid of the cartridge, you were waiting to go. and Greg Pascal was a cop,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
he'd say, hold back, then they'd reform, and as soon as they reform, 40
Kids would die for the shells. Yeah, that was a big thing.
Big thing. If you got 3, you're really doing good.
Perhaps,
And
yeah.
the shells, were they discharged, were they 22 rifles?
No, they were M1s.
Okay, well,
I
I
don't
don't know the
What
difference.
did we do with those things?
They used to have them at the Legion. Remember they had a rack in the Legion with the guns in them?
Yeah, I don't know
whatever happened.
The shells, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, well, you had them, but that's all.
Yeah.
But you know that back then, it's like we were the children of the greatest generation, and so a lot of these people were Korean War veterans or World War II veterans,
yeah.
and
My father was World War II.
took a, you know, let's talk a little bit. You know, we mentioned it in talking before about some of the people from Graniteville who went through a lot. I'll mention first of all my Uncle Donald, who was captured by the Germans in 1944, marched across Europe and was released by the Russians in Poland and was sent back on his own. Eddie Beebe.
Yeah, another one.
Eddie Beebe
Up for the
was
Congressional Medal of Honor or something.
he was
wasn't
nominated for the Congressional Medal of Honor.
Army Air Force, huh?
he? Yeah.
What he
He
did was
he was prisoner.
the plane he was on, from my understanding, the pilot bailed out. He was the co-pilot, landed the plane, and was captured. But it was just before the end of the war,
Yeah.
and so he spent some time in a hospital. He said he was treated
And up
fairly
next
well.
to Beaver, Tootie Dowsett, he was captured. He did the Bataan Death March, and then he got shipped to Japan to work in their coal mines
Teddy,
for the duration of the war,
Yeah.
almost.
Yeah.
You know? So I mean, he saw a lot, and he got wounded as well, I think.
And of course, Freddie Haley, who they named the Legion after,
Yeah.
had been in World War I, and he got himself into the service. He was 40-some years old for World War II, and he was killed.
yeah.
Yeah. And the Nagala boy,
Roger Gala, yeah.
he got killed.
Yeah, it was the another Air Force, yeah.
Well, that was interesting, Paul, because if back to 2009, if you recall, you come up to I think we were out golfing, and you said, you know, they only have these monuments
Yeah.
for World War I,
Yeah.
and so you and I and Paul Murray at the time
Yeah.
made sure that the plaques were up for, Vietnam.
Everybody
Korean War,
that's got killed in the war and lived in Westford is now accounted for
accounted for.
with a
yeah.
street sign.
And honored
Right,
in some way, yeah.
Yeah, and there's about, I think it's like 24 or something like that altogether. But that's a small town. That's a lot.
That's, yeah, absolutely.
Growing up, the town. That's the thing people don't realize. When we grew up, there was only 4,000 people in town.
Yeah.
Now it's 24,000. So it made a big difference.
You mentioned the Legion. You ever go to the penny sales down there?
Yep,
Oh,
fire
yeah.
department ran them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get little tickets for you pay your money and you put in a jar. How many? These 6 cans are 4 cents. 4 cents. So you had to put 4 tickets in.
Another event was the band concerts.
Yep.
Oh, yes.
You mentioned, Paul, you said there was one that they used to have over in front of the fire station.
They had that every year. The fire
Yeah.
department had that every year.
I don't remember
Yeah,
that one.
And then the same. It was a high school band.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
And they had the same vendor. The church over here had it in the parking lot on this side of the
That's what I
church.
remember, yeah.
And they had the same vendor from Lowell. He was a one-armed guy. I don't remember his name, but to see him blow up a balloon, entire balloon with one eye, I mean, it was amazing. But he had the popcorn.
I have a vague memory of that guy.
Yeah.
Yes.
He had the popcorn machine, the candy cane,
Sure.
whatever you call that.
Cotton
stuff.
candy.
Cotton
yeah,
candy.
that was a big deal.
Then Louis had one at the drugstore that was both big promotion. He had all kinds of posters. It was 3 or 4 guys with accordions from Lowell. That was kind of a bomb.
The one we talked about down here at the Methodist Church, though, was the one we've talked about it a number of times, that you knew that
Yeah.
the summer was over.
Yep.
This was the last big event.
Going back to school.
You looked forward to it, but you didn't.
Yeah.
Because you knew school was coming. But it was fun, though.
You'd save up maybe $1,
Yeah.
$1.50, and they'd have these little tables
hot
like
dog.
cotton candy.
Yeah,
and
it
that was a
hot
lot of
dogs
money
and-
for us back
Yeah,
then.
it was.
Yeah.
That was
It
good. It was a good spot for it too.
It was.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
And that's where you kind of met your first girlfriends sometimes,
I don't know. I didn't. It's girlfriends. And when we get to high school, something you don't see, record hops.
Oh,
Yeah.
Record hops. Murray's ran them.
The Elks had
The
it.
Elks ran them.
The Fletcher Club had them.
Fletcher Club had them. Fletcher Club had them in the summertime, and then they ended up when
Tuesday nights.
Tuesday nights, and then Friday nights they had them
Yeah.
when school went back into session.
We had dances at school, but they were too formal for us. Like,
That you had to get dressed up in a tie.
Yeah, well, we tried to have a Bermuda short dance. That didn't go well at all. Because we had to wear chinos, slacks to school every day.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes.
and
That's cold.
And
no T-shirts. You had to wear a shirt.
Yeah.
with a collar.
Yeah,
Cut
yeah.
too. Yeah.
And the girls had to wear. Couldn't show their shoulders, and the skirts had to be below their knees.
Danny Desmond, who was the principal at the time,
Yep.
former Marine, and a good guy.
Yeah, he was.
He was tough.
Yeah, it was.
Tough, but he was fair. But Danny Desmond we had a crew cut himself.
Oh yeah.
We'll
He
get
saw- he
down,
saw
and
a
if
lot of
your
action.
hair
We
was
didn't know
down,
that either.
No, he saw a lot of action.
Marine
World War
Corps,
II.
yeah.
but if your hair was growing down over your ear, you got a cut, or you weren't getting a diploma.
I had to go and shave one day because he says, "You didn't shave." I said, "Yes, I did." And he said, "Come to the office and
Yeah.
shave." And he said, "Oh yeah, all right, get out of here." You know?
That was true. You had to get a haircut.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's with high school, middle school, you went from Paul. You said all of us went from the high school up from sergeant school to the Rodenbush.
Rodenbush, yeah.
Okay, I spent 2 years there. You spent one, and then on to the Abbott, which was the high
man.
school at the time. Your class had how many members, Paul?
Around 90.
90 or so.
Yeah. We were the biggest class at that time.
Yeah.
But back then, people don't realize the high school started in the 7th grade. They housed the
Yeah.
7th and 8th grade, and then they just did the 8th, and then it became they
We were
moved
the
it back.
last class in the 8th grade.
Yeah. And the whole school population, and that's why
Oh,
you say
yeah.
when you start saying all the wrestling championships and the football and the basketball and track, we cleaned up in track too.
Yeah.
We only had 400 and something kids in the school,
Yeah.
and we were playing Framingham and places like that.
Well, when we did the research on the 62 team, we played St. Bernard. It was an all-boys school. We
Yeah.
had 500. We
Yeah.
had 500 in the whole school.
Yeah,
I don't kind of
Bishop Fenwick too.
Yeah.
Another boys' school.
Yeah.
it kind of to wrap things up here, you know, you guys stated you know you went into the service, both Vietnam veterans, and came back. But you know you're still in the house that you know you
Didn't go far. Yeah.
didn't go far.
I'm on the street I was born on.
Yeah,
And it's a dead end. Story of my life.
I lived in Drake for a while.
Yeah.
But we moved up from, we lived on Beacon Street when I was first born.
Yeah.
My parents lived in Maybe's house on the end of our street when I was born. And then we moved up to my grandmother's house, and my father made a two-room house out of a garage.
On North Street, the house my father built
Yeah.
in '53, my son Tim lives there, and my brother Roger lives next door to him. But I wanted to talk a little bit, you know, we're on top of the bandstand on the observation deck that was built by a group called Graniteville Pride.
Yep.
Created in 1997, I guess it
It
was.
was 25 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, 25, 26
26,
years
yeah.
ago, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
But what happened was, Diane, the driving force behind it were the Haleys, Diane
Diane,
particularly.
Yeah, she was president.
And she organized, got a group. We were meeting first of all in the church, the Methodist church here, and we went about cleaning things up. We cleared up that whole area. Well, from there went the Mill Pond
Took the old,
Restoration
took
Committee.
the old boathouse down.
Took the boathouse down, put in benches.
Yeah.
You couldn't even see the pond from the street.
No.
No, you couldn't.
No.
Built a gazebo down there that is used by a lot of the, cleaned up the corners and welcomed the Graniteville.
And we planted a lot of trees. We donated
yeah.
screen houses to the housing.
You know, so that Graniteville Pride, with the core of us that were organized, that still remain.
We got one more coming up.
And we have the final spaghetti supper October 14th of this year. So.
We've outlived the organization.
Yeah. Okay, listen, I want to thank you guys for taking the time to come on. Maybe give the people a little background of, you know, what it was like in a smaller town.
This,
Yeah.
I think none of us would have traded it all in for
Nope.
anything.
Good
Yeah.
point, well
No,
taken.
it might have
you
been boring, but we loved it though. I mean,
We had fun, and
Best
we
place.
were out all the time.
best place to grow up. Yeah.
Yeah.
We were out all the time. Like I said, the thing with the Finks and the Punk, we used to play basketball in the warehouses. Remember?
Yeah,
Gee,
yeah.
You got
It
hurt.
was-
We got hurt more there than we did in football.
I was going to say, you know, and I think we all agreed that, you know, it was a great place to go. We had great experiences,
Yeah, good people,
you know,
yeah.
and good people.
We had a
And-
good group of. There was no problems either.
No.
No problem.
The problems were taken care of by a guy like John Cornell that would say, "All right, boys,"
Yeah.
and you respected that.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. He was a big guy.
Yeah.
He had hands like a ham.
Showed me
Honestly,
too,
they were bear claws.
Okay, that was the Boys of Graniteville, and on Bandstand Hill. So we're on Bandstand, I guess. Thanks for coming, guys.
That's
The
a
club.
wrap.